Armenia and Azerbaijan have been locked in a seemingly intractable conflict for decades. But last week, the leaders of the two South Caucasus countries met alongside US President Donald Trump at the White House to sign a deal aimed at settling their long dispute. As well as hopefully putting Armenia and Azerbaijan on a path to peace, the deal creates a new transit corridor in the strategically important region, called the Trump Route for International Peace and Prosperity, or TRIPP, inserting the US in an area previously considered to be Russia's backyard. So in this video, we're going to explain how the deal came about, what's in it, why it's bad news for Russia and Iran, and why there's still a few hurdles to peace. Never miss an episode and always feel in the loop by subscribing and ringing the bell. For context, Armenia and Azerbaijan have been adversaries since around the collapse of the Soviet Union, when they gained independence. In the early 1990s, a war between the two countries saw Armenia back majority ethnic Armenian separatists in Nagorno-Karabakh, southwestern Azerbaijan. The war ended in 1994 with the de facto independence of Nagorno-Karabakh, including Armenian control of adjacent Azerbaijani territory. Then in 2020, a new 1.5-month war erupted, and Azerbaijan, having built a formidable military stocked with Turkish and Israeli hardware, managed to retake control of the area surrounding Nagorno-Karabakh. Then in 2023, Azerbaijan conquered the whole breakaway territory in a single day, prompting virtually the entire ethnic Armenian population to flee. Russia, which had peacekeepers on the ground and had previously been Armenia's security guarantor, did not intervene to limit or prevent Azerbaijan's offensive, reflecting the recent deterioration in Armenia-Russia relations and the preoccupation of Russia's military in Ukraine. The conquest of Nagorno-Karabakh prompted an intensification of negotiations aimed at putting the long-running conflict to rest. Since early 2024, the two countries have been inching towards a peace agreement, with the US taking up a leading mediator role under Biden and then Trump. Then, in March 2025, there was a breakthrough on the draft language of a future peace deal, but certain crucial issues remained unresolved, most notably the so-called Zangezur corridor. This transport corridor, a key goal of Azerbaijan's president Ilham Aliyev, would connect Azerbaijan to its exclave Nakhchivan by traversing the 40-kilometer wide southern tip of Armenia that separates Nakhchivan from Azerbaijan proper. But Armenia's Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan opposed the idea, seeing the Zangezur corridor as a potential violation of Armenia's territorial integrity. And that's where the humbly named Trump Route for International Peace and Prosperity comes in. Because last Friday's joint declaration, signed by Pashinyan and Aliyev at the White House, sees Armenia grant a 99-year lease to the US to develop the transit corridor, with a private US company constructing and managing it, while the area will still remain under Armenian legal jurisdiction, thus respecting Armenia's sovereignty and territorial integrity, according to the White House. No longer called the Zangezur Corridor, the Trump Route for International Peace and Prosperity, or TRIPP, envisions road and rail links, oil and gas pipelines, and fiber optic cables, which the White House said would allow unimpeded connectivity between Azerbaijan and Nakhchivan. It's worth quickly pointing out that this joint declaration is not a final conflict-ending accord, though. There are still unresolved issues that need clearing before the final agreement is signed. So, who actually benefits from this? Well, we see four main winners: Azerbaijan, Turkey, the US, and Armenia. For Azerbaijan's President Aliyev, TRIPP will achieve his goal of connecting Azerbaijan proper with Nakhchivan, making internal movements of people and goods a lot easier. It will also basically directly connect Azerbaijan proper with its major ally of Turkey, as Turkey and Nakhchivan have a short border. This therefore makes Azerbaijan's exports, particularly of plentiful oil and gas to Europe, much easier, by providing an alternative route to the one that passes through Georgia to the north. On a broader scale, it also boosts Azerbaijan's position as a critical node along the so-called Middle Corridor, which runs between Europe and the resource-rich Central Asia and China. The strategic importance of the Middle Corridor has grown since Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the subsequent sanctions, as it provides an alternative east-west land route that bypasses Russia. Enhanced trade along this route naturally benefits Turkey's economy too, and helps cement Turkey's growing regional influence. A permanent peace between Armenia and Azerbaijan, if achieved, could also pave the way for Armenia-Turkey normalization. Armenia sees obvious economic benefits from integrating itself into the Middle Corridor and hopes to see long-shut borders reopened. The landlocked country has been walled off to the east and west for 3 decades now due to Turkey and Azerbaijan's border closures. Armenia is also hoping that the US's presence means that it will act as a sort of security guarantor in what has historically been a pretty hostile neighborhood. The US is obviously a winner here too, though. The whole deal couldn't really be more Trump. It blends an American commercial venture with a push for peace, see his mineral deals in Ukraine and the Congo, and it has his name slapped on it for good measure. Trump is naturally touting this as evidence of his deal-striking and peacemaking credentials, and it forms part of his unofficial campaign to win a Nobel Peace Prize. Of course, TRIPP represents a commercial opportunity to the US, but geostrategically speaking, it's also a major insertion of the US into a region previously considered to be Russia's backyard, as well as one in which Iran has wielded influence. This could provide the US with a stronger position in negotiations with Russia and Iran over Ukraine and nuclear development, for example. Although a potentially centuries-long US commitment to the area does raise the risk of America being involved in a foreign entanglement in the event of any future flare-ups. Nonetheless, that brings us on to the losers. And this really highlights the Kremlin's waning influence in the Caucasus. We made videos detailing Armenia's turn away from Russia towards the west, as well as Azerbaijan's falling out with Russia. It was only 5 years ago that Russia was the main mediator and was set to oversee the Zangezur Corridor project, only for both Armenia and Azerbaijan to ditch that idea. So the US now overseeing the project really is salt in the wound. As well as reinforcing the Middle Corridor trade route at Russia and Iran's expense, TRIPP has caused particular frustration in Iran because it effectively means an American presence along the Armenia-Iran border, which has been an important gateway to the outside world for Iran, linking it to Georgia, Russia, the Black Sea, and beyond. Iran has therefore threatened to prevent the establishment of TRIPP, claiming that it would end up a graveyard for Trump's mercenaries. So, what about the future? Well, a few key questions remain unanswered. Does the Trump administration have the patience and bandwidth to see the project through? Will subsequent administrations continue it? Will it drive Armenia and Azerbaijan to a final peace agreement and a broader opening of borders? And even on that, there are still outstanding issues. Notably, Azerbaijan wants Armenia to remove references to Nagorno-Karabakh from its constitution. But this would require a referendum, and Pashinyan is already pretty unpopular in Armenia due to the various concessions he's had to make to Azerbaijan in order to get to this point. Now, when you're diving into complicated topics such as this, it's quite easy to get caught up in what you know without even missing a beat. But what about the stories you don't see? Or what happens when the stories you do see are purposely leaving out information to try and sway your thinking? Thankfully, our sponsor this week, Ground News, are experts at helping with just that. That's because Ground News is a website and app that collects thousands of articles from across the world and puts them all in one place for you to easily compare how the news is being covered by different outlets online. For each and every story, you can see the number of sources reporting on it, as well as the political bias, factuality, and ownership of said sources. For example, if we take this story on the Armenia-Azerbaijan deal, you can see that there are 465 sources reporting on it, with 83 of them coming from the left and 73 coming from the right. You can even compare the headlines to see what either side is saying, with the left generally framing it with cautious skepticism, in contrast to the right, which seems to employ laudatory rhetoric to celebrate Trump's personal mediation. That's not all though. Ground News has tons of super handy features, and our personal favourite is their blind spot feed. Here you can find stories that have been disproportionately covered by one side of the political spectrum, helping you challenge your perspective on someone else's media reality. Here at TLDR, we're passionate about helping you understand how bias may affect the media you consume, something that Ground News also firmly believes in. Because of this, we're offering 40% off their unlimited access Vantage Plan subscription if you use the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen. You can only access this discount through our link, so make sure you go to ground.news/TLDR or click the link in the description to get started today.